So everyone, this is Neil Bradley, and Neil is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's Chief Policy Officer. Hi, Neil.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Last night was fun. Did you all have fun? I had a lot of fun.
Yeah. So Neil and I have this regular gig together called a Small Business Update, where we get together and we talk about the issues that are impacting small businesses. And Neil has a real knack for explaining things that seem really complicated to me in a way that I can understand, and I think that our audience really appreciates. So
Thank you.
I'm going to not even look at my questions because my first question is, we are in a government shutdown.
We are.
So where do things stand with that? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, eventually the government will reopen. It's just a question of when. You know, listen, on one hand, you kind of look at it and you say, government is not, thankfully, the engine of our economy or of our society, right? You all are the engines of our economy. You're the engines of your community. That said, like, a well-functioning economy needs a functioning government that doesn't feel like it's too much to ask, and there is real pain for people who have to rely on the government. So thousands of small business contractors who will go without their bills being paid, and who knows when they'll have the opportunity to recoup those funds. If you were about to get a SBA-backed loan, that's on hold today. I hope you weren't making a major plan based on the timing of that loan, because you don't know when it's going to go through now. These are real-world implications for business, not to mention the personal implications. Every time we have one of these shutdowns, we hear horrific stories of people with awful, life-threatening diseases who were about to go into a clinical trial at the National Institutes of Health who can't enroll until the government reopens. So shutdowns are choices. This is a bad choice, and hopefully our elected officials will realize that quickly and bring it to an end.
One thing here at the Chamber, we love to hear from small businesses, and we actually would love to hear from anyone here or anyone watching at home if the shutdown is impacting your business. We, on our Watch Live page at home, you'll see a link where you can submit those stories. And to everyone here, we'll also be sending an email after this event where you can tell us your stories. We'd really like to hear how it's impacting your business. Yeah.
And those stories make a difference. Like, if you want to know what moves policymakers or elected officials to compromise, it's when they hear the real world impacts of how their decisions are causing, or in this case, indecision, is causing harm, and it makes a real difference, and so those stories are super helpful.
Yeah. Okay, so you started to talk about the economy. Let's just talk about the economy in general. What are you seeing? What do you like? What are you worried about?
We have an amazingly strong economy. The resiliency that's occurring from main streets kind of all the way across the country is real. I think from our perspective at the Chamber, it's not that we're worried about a recession. That seems not in the cards today. That's a good thing. I think what worries us is that we think we could be growing even stronger, that we could have an economy that's growing, you know, above 3% a year, and instead we're going to grow at like 2%. And you know, that's a big difference between 2 and 3%, and it's a big difference in terms of opportunities for businesses to grow. It's a big difference in terms of how we can lift wages. And so when we think of the economy, we think the private sector is doing a pretty good job. We're making lots of investments. The government is helping in some places. I think the tax bill, for example, is a place where it's helped, but it's hurting in other places. Tariffs, uncertainty, things like government shutdowns, just keep holding us back from our real potential.
You talked about tariffs.
Taxes. Tariffs are taxes.
Oh.
They are taxes.
Yes,
so,
sorry.
Yeah.
So but can we talk about tariffs?
Sure, of course.
So where do things stand? I've sort of lost track of what's happening with tariffs.
Yeah, so let's rewind to the beginning of the year. The beginning of the year, for all the things that we import into the United States, and by the way, a lot of people think of the things that we import as a finished good that you buy in a store. That's true, there are a lot of those, but actually a majority of the things that we import are things that we use to make things here in America. So it's the ingredient that you need for, let's say, coffee. We don't really grow a lot of coffee in the United States. We grow some, but not near enough to meet our demand. That's an ingredient that goes into it. Or it's a particular part that you need in manufacturing. At the beginning of the year, our tariff rates were about 2 to 3% on average of the value of the good. We're at about 18% of value. That works out to about a $600 billion tax increase on the economy. You can't raise taxes by $600 billion and not at least have some negative effect on the economy and growth. Now, where are things going forward? There's going to be a Supreme Court hearing in about a month on whether or not the president's use of this 1970s law to do most of his tariffs is legal or not. So far, 3 courts have said it's not legal. So what happens if the Supreme Court agrees? Well, first, if you paid tariffs under that statute, you're going to get a refund. But that doesn't mean that the tariffs are necessarily going away. The president has lots of tools to impose tariffs, and it's pretty clear that if the Supreme Court says you can't use this tool, that he's going to turn to other tools, which he almost certainly has the legal authority to use. So tariffs aren't going away, but if the Supreme Court says these tariffs are unconstitutional, look for your refund.
Do you want to talk about, in case people don't know, and I'm sure they don't, what is the Chamber's position on tariffs?
Yeah, we've been around 113 years. You saw that in the video. For 113 years, we have not liked tariffs. So we're maintaining our great consistency there. It's not that tariffs can never be used. There are some national security reasons to have tariffs. There are some times when countries try to take advantage of us in unfair ways in which a tariff can be an appropriate response, but those are the exceptions, not the rule. The rule ought to be that in a free economy, just like you trade with people in your community, you buy the best product at the best value, you try to sell the best product at the best value. In a global economy, we can improve, the rising tide can lift all boats if we have the opportunity to sell, to buy with people, not just across our country, but across the globe.
So, on the flip side, earlier this year, Congress passed the One Big Beautiful Bill, and that contains...
That's actually the legal name of it. I don't know what they were thinking. Like, really, like, I'm really going to convey to you what this bill does. It's the One Big Beautiful Bill. Like, yeah. But anyhow, I digress.
But we remember it, so maybe it was good branding.
Yeah, but we should remember what it does,
right.
though.
Well,
yeah.
You're going to tell us right now.
Okay.
So tell us, there are some things in there that actually will be helpful to small businesses. So can you talk about some of those things? Yeah,
so let's start with most of the important thing, the big tax increase that we avoided. So businesses who are small businesses generally are pass-throughs. You pay your taxes on your personal income tax. The top marginal tax rate on business income is just under 29%. Had Congress not passed this bill, it would have jumped to over 39% effective January 1. That is a huge increase. That is a big tax hit on small businesses. It also would have meant that we were, relative to big companies, we were taxing small businesses at a much higher rate than big companies. This bill stops that from happening. Perhaps the most important thing from a growth perspective is if you're making investments in your business, you're buying a new truck, you're buying a new machine, you have new office equipment, your ability to completely write off 100% of those expenses in the year in which they occur, and in addition, your ability to write off 100% of your research and development expenses in the year in which they occur is made permanent under this bill. In other words, there's no longer a tax on investing in your business, which means that businesses are freer to invest, and that investment leads to growth.
One of the themes of the Co 100 and what we heard from many small businesses is that taking care of their employees is what helps them be competitive because they can attract and retain employees. And there are a couple of provisions in this bill that help companies do that. So can you talk about those?
Yeah, let me start with the first one. I think it was Red Rooster Coffee last night who talked about having a child care facility for their employees. We know in communities across the country that a difficulty that a lot of employees have is a lack of access to affordable child care. One of the things that this bill does is says if you're an employer and you're making investments in the child care accessibility for your employees, the federal government's going to give you a tax credit of above 50% if you're actually a small business for those costs. Now, for most small businesses, you still look at it and you say, yeah, but we're not big enough on our own to have a child care facility, et cetera. What this bill does is says you can actually partner with other businesses in your community. You can all contribute to expanding child care accessibility. You can hire a third party, a child care provider, to actually do that for you so that you don't have to do it yourself, and you can still get the tax benefit. And so we're already hearing about local communities where businesses are getting together and saying, hey, if we all contribute, we can help get this child care facility doubled in size, or we can create a new one, and it's going to be cheaper for us to do it because of this federal tax credit.
Yeah. I just want to let the audience know I'm going to ask Neil a couple more questions, but then we're going to come to you if you have questions for him. So start thinking about what those are, and when I let you know, you can raise your hand and one of our mic runners will come to you. So I wanted to talk about immigration. You know, a lot of businesses rely on immigrants as employees. Can you tell us what's happening with immigration and where you think things are going?
Yeah, first, credit to the Trump administration for taking really important steps to secure the border. What was happening there, whatever your beliefs are about how people, the right levels of legal immigration, what we saw happening at the border, like none of us should be satisfied by that. And it's good that with respect to the border that we've stopped that. Now we have questions about what do we do with respect to people who are legally working. And I remind the folks across the street quite often that the federal government over decades, as a matter of policy and law, has given people who didn't initially enter the country legally a piece of paper that says you can legally work until it's safe for you to go back to your home country in the case of temporary protected status, until you have an asylum hearing, which might be your right under federal law. You can work, and you can legally work. That's a good thing. Like, we want people working. We don't want people really, if you're going to be here, if you have a legal right to be here for some period of time, we want you to work. And by the way, if you're an employer, you've hired these individuals and you've done everything right. The government has said they're legally eligible to work. You haven't done anything wrong. Well, we're in the midst of pulling back those legal work authorizations, which means all of a sudden people, some of who've been here a couple of decades, have suddenly gone from being legally eligible to work to not legally eligible to work. That means that we don't have a lot of people that the economy needs in order to grow. And so we're very much talking with Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill. For years, they've said, yes, we want to increase legal immigration. We want to make it easier for people to come here and contribute to our economy, but we got to do something about the border first. Something's been done about the border. Now let's finish the job and talk about how we make it easier for people to come here to legally work and contribute to our economy.
Okay, one more from me, and then we'll go to the audience. So yesterday, members of our Co 100 participated in an AI training with an instructor from Google, and it was really amazing. People were super engaged with it, and you and I have been talking about how AI is going to help small businesses grow and deal with hiring issues and filling roles and be more productive. So can you just talk a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of how businesses are using AI?
One of the things I love about my job is I get to talk to businesses of all sizes across industries. I get to talk with small businesses like yours, get to talk to really big businesses. And the fun thing for me when I'm talking to some of the big businesses and they ask about what are you optimistic about, I almost always say AI and the productivity. And I say, hey, I want to, and you know, they're confident in how they're using AI in their big business. And that's all nice. And I say, but you know what? You know why I'm optimistic? Because small businesses are using it more quickly and more effectively than the biggest businesses. And they all go, that can't be true. I go, it is true. Our data, our research shows 58% of small businesses self-report they're using generative AI. The first time we did that poll 3 years ago, I've said this publicly, I didn't believe the results. It was 23%. That can't be true. Sat down with a group of small businesses, like half the hands in the room went up. I started asking them how they're using it. You all are being way more inventive than big businesses. Even at the chamber, we have lots of rules about how we use AI, and we're using it, and we think of ourselves as inventive. You all are rule breakers in a really good way, and you are doing the innovative things that a lot of large businesses won't do. So the reason I'm optimistic about AI, the reason I'm optimistic about productivity growth and therefore economic growth is because lots of companies, lots of small businesses are being really innovative and using AI to make themselves more productive and to grow, and that is absolutely going to lead to a stronger economy.
Yeah, I think that's the theme over and over again about small businesses. They're always able to adapt and pivot and experiment more quickly.
You go to a big business and you talk about using AI, and the first people that come in aren't AI engineers. It's teams of lawyers to tell you about what you can't do. I don't suspect any of you are bringing teams of lawyers in to talk about what you can't do.
Yeah. All right, let's go to some audience questions. If you have one, raise your hand, and Kevin or Maureen will get to you.
So good morning, everyone. I'm Darlene Wilson-Gallion. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. I own an accounting firm there, 20 years in January. So my question is regarding immigration, and because you spoke to that, in terms of the border itself has already been protected, but then we also have to do something about what's happening with those that are here, and technically here legally to the degree in which they are working. So we know that there's a great impact today. It's not tomorrow. I mean, our farmers and those that are working in these areas that rely on immigrants to do the work is not only hurting the input of the work, which is the farming side of things, the worker, it is also affecting the end user, which is the consumer. So when do we have a resolution, and what are the next steps to a resolution regarding immigration? Because this has been, not just in this administration, but over several administrations, an issue and a concern.
Well, first, you're exactly right. The impacts are being felt today. It's not just in the farm community or in construction or in hospitality. I was talking to a small manufacturer. Everyone had a legal work authorization, but about 10% of the small manufacturer's workforce didn't originally enter the country legally, had gotten a legal work authorization, and now might be forced to leave. That's a huge impact if you're a small manufacturer. What's going to make a difference? This is going to take Congress. They're not really great at doing the basics at the moment, keeping the government open. So we're going to have to push them. The U.S. Chamber, you all, back home in our communities, we're going to have to push them by telling the story that their inability or refusal to get something done on legal immigration is holding us back. By the way, I don't think it has to be one big complicated bill. I think that we can address things like ag workers independently. I think we can address H-2B, seasonal workers. I think we can do something for construction and dairy. I think we can do something to expand high-skilled. The important thing is that we just start doing something, because until we start doing something, we're going to be stuck with this really large problem.
Any other questions? Oh.
Hello. This is Ayça with Newman Blinds. I am one of CEO 100. I came to United States under E1 visa. Again, my comment is going to be about the immigration. And in E1 visa, more than 50% of your goods needs to come from the country that you're coming from. And after some time, we had an extension on the visa. But even if you have to be related with the country that you're bringing the goods from, in the extension of 2 years, I couldn't travel to the country that I have to bring the products from. So that was a really very tough time for me, because I couldn't attend to any exhibitions, any shows. I didn't go to visit any companies in the country that I need to bring more products from. That was a really challenging time for me, that 2 years during that extension. I believe there needs to be a little bit adjustment, at least according to the visa that you're carrying. I just wanted to give my thought about this. I believe in E1 visa especially, there need to be made some adjustment for people to be more comfortable going back and forth to their countries, instead of like being like prisonized in this position and not being able to travel.
Could not agree more.
Thank you.
If all of us who enjoy food or cultural aspects from around the world, how does that occur? It occurs because we have people who have emigrated from those countries, who trade with those countries, who introduce us to all of our favorite global cuisines or products, and that makes us richer as a country.
You know, we never say this during these interviews, but I think we should say this. Each of you has these stories about these issues that are impacting you. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce is advocating on your behalf, but we need to know what those issues are. So please become a member. It's very inexpensive to become a member of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce as a small business. And if you become a member and we are hearing from you and engaging with you regularly, we can better advocate on these issues that we're hearing about from all of these people.
When I'm up lobbying lawmakers, I would say 40%, I'm telling them data statistics. 60%, I'm repeating, without attribution of names, stories that you all have told me.
Yeah, so think about membership, please. We are almost out of time, but I want to take one question, but I would love it if it was a non-immigration question, only so that we can, so a quick question from someone. Yeah.
Hey, good morning. I'm Renata Spinks. I'm the former Chief Information Security Officer of the Marine Corps, so I have a cyber question.
Excellent.
How do you see, as you're interacting, thank you, with the lawmakers, when the government is open, now that the government is shut down, across sectors, farming, immigration, you name it, how are you seeing them addressing the cybersecurity challenges that we have when we're open, when we're shut down, national security, critical infrastructure, all of the above? How are the lawmakers thinking about that, in your opinion, and what are some of the steps you think we could take to increase that posture?
Yeah, let me give you a positive and let me give you a quick negative. On the positive side, we really do have some of the best experts in the world in government who are helping navigate these issues. So I have a lot of confidence in the career officials that we have in government who are helping do that. The negative is that government can't do it alone. Right? And so the systems, the vulnerabilities, so much of it is in the private sector. And for a number of years now, we've tried to emphasize the importance of public and private collaboration on this. That the private sector can't handle this in its own silo, government can't either. And we have some people who are raising questions about that level of cooperation and suggesting that maybe we shouldn't incentivize that level of cooperation. A provision that actually protected private-public sector cooperation just expired. We have to reset that conversation. We have to get those things back, because we're not going to prevent these attacks unless we're working on it together.
All right, that is all we have time for. I thank you so much. Please help me in thanking Neil.
Thank you.